The key elements that I noticed in my visit to Shanghai, and also when the Chinese teachers visited us in November, was how carefully they crafted their lessons, and how each lesson really focused on such a small concept to ensure that every child in the class fully understood that concept before moving on. And what I noticed was that the children in year 1 and 2 in Shanghai were really working on the basics. So every single child had grasped and mastered the basics. So that by the time they got into grade 4 and 5, what they were accessing and the way they were able to solve problems and apply the different areas of maths was fantastic, but it was for every child. And the thing that I noticed at our school is that we have children who could access that at that level, however, not every child. And what I wanted to do is go back to our school and think, right, what can we do in our school to close the gap? Because it's something we've been focusing on, is in closing that attainment gap. But actually what they do in Shanghai is prevent the gap. They ensure that that gap never starts. So that was the key thing that inspired me to make the changes. So having decided that this was a change we wanted to make to the mathematics in our school, I decided that actually year 3 was our priority. We're a junior school, so we only get children from year 3. So for me, that was the key year group to start making the changes with. We are a large junior school, we have 6th form entry, and for me it was about working with, we have 7 teachers teaching mathematics in year 3, and it was about working closely with those teachers to make sure they fully understood the principles behind the changes, and then working with the year 3 teachers, then next year taking that forward, and the children will be fully working within the principles of the mastery going to year 4, and then me working with the year 4 teachers to really ensure that they understood the principles and so on, and taking these children through the school year on year. The first thing was when the Shanghai teachers came to visit us, we made sure that all the teachers in the school had a chance to observe the approach and to evaluate that and unpick that together in terms of the way that they've broken down the lessons and the strategies they were using, like the conceptual and procedural variation within those lessons. From there, what I've done is I've worked really closely with the year 3 team. We've got a year 3 maths lead who we work together weekly to unpick the concepts that the children are going to learn and breaking those down into really, really small steps. And that has been crucial because one of the really important things is that we don't move children on too quickly. And if anything, that's been where we've made the mistakes, is that we think we've broken the concept down, but actually you can break it down even further. So really focusing on one small thing within a lesson has been crucial. So I've worked with the year 3 maths lead, who has then worked with the rest of her team to really make sure that they understand the principles and the concepts in the lessons being taught, the kind of questioning strategies to use with the children, and the approach and what to focus on. We've also done a lot of team teaching, observing myself teaching in the year 3 lead, doing joint observations together, the whole year group. And we've taken the approach of using the teacher research groups like I saw in Shanghai, and that's had a huge impact on the teaching in year 3. One of the things that's really, really important is the depth of the teacher's subject knowledge, particularly in a mastery approach. It's about the teachers really understanding the concept so that it can build on that in small steps to support the children. What we've done to support the teachers is we've looked at each of the key concepts, and we've looked at those small steps of progression together to make sure that the teachers are breaking that down into those small steps. We've taken each of those concepts and then even unpicked those further as well. One of the things that we've done is looked at the type of question stems that they can use while working with the children in those maths lessons. We've created PowerPoints together and unpicked them together to make sure that they can see the next step, and they understand why we've chosen that question as the next question. So really incorporating the procedural and conceptual variation, but not just giving that to the teachers, making sure that they can see why those examples have been selected and the reason for that in terms of how the children progress through a 35-minute lesson. One of the biggest impacts that we've noticed straight away is actually the buzz in year 3 in mathematics. So all the people who have come to observe the lessons, other members of the school that have come in, have really noticed the excitement and the engagement about within mathematics. They've noted how confident the children are. They've noted how clearly they can explain their mathematical understanding. They've noticed how their fluency has increased. There's been a big focus on children learning their number bonds and their times tables. They do times tables in the assembly, they do it on the playground, and the children are really excited about learning their times tables, and that's really supported them within their lessons. There's also confidence with the teachers as well, and I think initially some of the teachers were a little bit nervous about this approach, because traditionally in our school we've taught in sets, so they've had a smaller attainment range within their group to work with, and initially that was one of the concerns. However, the teachers embrace this approach, and they can see how actually breaking it down into such small steps means all the children can access it, but you're challenging the children at different levels. I'm challenging them with the questions I'm asking them. I'm challenging them in the way that I expect them to represent their work. I'm challenging the way that I'm bringing in the other aspects of maths to allow them to make connections in their learning. So the teacher's confidence in their maths and enjoyment as well has increased as well. One of the biggest changes for us has been the structure to our maths lessons. When we were in Shanghai, the lessons were only 35 minutes, and that was from grade 1 right up until grade 5. They were all 35 minutes long, quite intense maths lessons, and then the children had a break after that, and then they did practice later in the day. It was something that when we started implementing the approach in our school, we had our maths in our maths time, which was an hour long, but we noticed that after 35-40 minutes there was a bit of a dip in the lesson. So we've restructured our day so that we have a 35-minute maths lesson where the children have the input to the concept, and they're all working together, the class on the same material together. And then later in the day we have our practice, consolidation and intervention session, where depending on how the children have got on in the lesson would depend on how this lesson is structured. So the children are practicing what they've learnt in the earlier session. They do their practice, and then they will deepen that understanding if they've grasped that by going on to making other connections, doing problem-solving activities within that learning, and they do that independently while the teacher works alongside any children who she noted that hadn't grasped the concept earlier on in the morning. So she'll work with the children, going over the concept, unpicking things from that lesson to make sure that the children grasp it, so that every child is ready to move on tomorrow. And that's been the key, is that no child gets left behind, because actually if they've not caught up, if they're not ready to access the next day's material, we do something about it there and then, and make sure that the next steps are next steps for everyone, and that's really closed that gap. However, the children who do rapidly grasp the task are still being challenged within that lesson by applying it into different contexts, or making up their own problems as well. Yes, so when we started to implement the approach in year 3, there was a group of children who were not accessing the curriculum at year 3. They were working way below the expectations for year 3. So this started out as a group of 28 children, but actually by implementing the mastery approach and going right back to basics with the children, stripping any barriers of the large numbers, really focusing on concepts, these children have been able to access the curriculum and actually catch up to their peers and able to access the curriculum back in class with the children. We're down to a group of 7 children who are still working significantly below expectations. However, they've been following the same lessons and the same design of lessons, but they've just been working at a slower pace, using more resources to help them really understand the concepts being taught. And they're also having additional maths lessons outside that time to try and close that gap so that they can access the curriculum alongside with their peers in class as well. So the next steps for us in our school are to roll this out with our next cohort of Year 3. So the Year 3 is coming into us in September. We'll carry on working, we'll start working with us in a mastery approach. The Year 3 team have been working with these principles. They really understand the mastery approach, and they will carry on working with the Year 3. The children going from Year 3 will go into Year 4, working in the mixed ability classes, and our next step is to work with the Year 4 team to really ensure that they understand the principles. And again, they have the CPD where we do the team teaching, we're doing the lesson observation, they're doing the teacher research group, and the idea is these children will move through the school, so by 2 years' time, in 2 years' time, we'll have the whole school working in this approach. However, the other thing we've decided to do in September is have inset for all our staff, because we've taken the approach of whole class teaching with our Year 3s, and we want to continue that through the school. However, the Year 5 and 6 teachers can learn lots from this as well. There's lots of aspects that they can learn from. So really unpicking what conceptual and procedural variation looks like in intelligent practice. So although they're not doing the whole class teaching yet in Year 5 and 6, but they can embed some of these strategies that are having such an impact in Year 3s as well. Yes, so we've been working with other schools to share our understanding of the approach, and also to share with how we've gone about implementing the mathematics mastery in our school. We held observations when the Chinese teachers were here so that they could come and see the Chinese teachers working with us. But since then, what we've done is we've held a initial conference to allow the other schools to come and work with us to unpick the principles behind the mastery approach. There was a chance for them to observe our Year 3 teachers and again unpick the lesson afterwards and ask questions and look at how the teacher had designed the lessons, but also to see the impact that it was having on our children in England, and how we'd adapted what we saw in Shanghai to fit with the children's needs within our school as well. Following on from that, we had lots and lots of positive feedback, and from there we've established teacher research groups where again the teachers have come together, and again we've gone through, we've really unpicked the principles behind the mastery approach and what that looks like in terms of a mastery curriculum, but also in terms of the mastery approach to teaching as well, and what that looks like in the classroom. We've unpicked some lessons together. Again, they've had the chance to observe teachers teaching and ask questions and really look at how they can go about implementing it in their school, because we've had schools from very different contexts, very small schools with mixed form entries, and very large schools, junior schools and primary schools as well. So we've really looked about how they could implement these principles in their school as well.